So I guess the government of Canada is now a pipeline company, an oil and gas company. Uh, $4.5 billion Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government just spent on Kinder Morgan. It's $125 per person, per Canadian taxpayer. And of course, these costs are obviously going to expand, right? As soon as government owns a project, starts managing a project, you can expect the budget to double. So this is just what they bought it for, but now they have to get it constructed and they have to deal with all the unexpected things that are going to pop up. And we haven't seen the price tag on this thing yet. I guarantee that. And it's going to be at least double. That's my prediction. At least, probably more like triple. So people have asked me what my comments are. Obviously, it should be patently obvious that libertarians are against government owning shoe manufacturing plants, farms, trucking companies, oil pipelines. This should go without saying. This isn't the job of government. The job of government has one thing, and that is to protect liberty, to protect individual liberty, and in this case, to enforce Confederation, to enforce the rule of law. And BC signed on to Confederation in the 1800s with the expressed obligation, that an agreement that they happily took on, that they would allow a railway to be punched through to the port in Vancouver and allow Canadians' goods to get out to port, to get to the West Coast, and so that they can export products. And they could then enjoy the benefit of being a member of this federation. And now it seems like BC government wants all the benefits of being part of Federation, geographical defense, transfer payments, all the things that come along with being part of Confederation, but they don't want any of the obligations or responsibilities that go with it. And doesn't this just perfectly describe the state of the world and society and people these days? They want all the freedom and none of the responsibility. They want everyone else to pay the cost, and they don't want to have to bear any of the cost at all. So it's troubling, and it's troubling on many levels. So one level it's troubling on is that so one of the excuses that's being used is, well, this is going to improve the economy. This is going to jobs. And of course, yes, there are going to be jobs created. You got to build this pipeline. That oil getting to market is going to, create jobs and different things like that. But what is unseen is what that $4.5 billion would have done if just simply left in the pockets of Canadians, right? This is what economists call the unseen costs. We don't know what that money would have been, what would have been done with that money. The market is far more intelligent than a couple of bureaucrats in a government office, and allocates money more efficiently and more productively than government can. So we don't know that this is the most productive use of that money, and so we can't say that it's going to improve the economy. All we can say is it's going to create some jobs that are visible and probably cost some jobs that we'll never know about. If you want to read more about this, look at Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson and read the chapter on the broken window fallacy. Next is that government screws up everything, right? So typically if an oil company is going to build a pipeline, they understand they're going to own this pipeline for 30 to 50 years. And so as they're building it and unexpected things pop up that require re-engineering or re-looking at how they're going to construct the pipeline in a particular area, maybe they run into a marsh or find some unexpectedly soft ground or something, a pipeline will look at it and they'll look at their long-term liability, right? They don't want to have to pay millions or billions of dollars down the road if there's a catastrophic failure. And so they make sure and over-engineer things and don't cut corners because they're going to be on the hook for it. Well, what's the incentive for a contractor that's building this pipeline, who's not going to own it and own any responsibility for it, who has no skin in the game, to not cut corners? I mean, it cuts into their bottom line. What's the incentive of the politicians who are only going to be here for another 4 to 8 years? They're never going to have to own the responsibility of anything happening. So where's the incentive and the pressure to ensure that proper standards are met and corners aren't cut. And so I think this poses a greater environmental risk than if Kinder Morgan were doing it. And of course, in 30 years, if there's an oil spill on this line, what are people going to beg for? Are they going to beg for less government because you caused this problem? Or are they going to beg for more government? No, of course they're going to ask for the government to spend more money and to have more oversight and to create more departments and to have more intervention, because culture today, government is magic and it fixes everything. So, we have bought onto negative unintended consequences in perpetuity here. This is reminiscent also of I just can't help but remember the disaster that was Trudeau Sr.'s National Energy Program, which is estimated to have cost Alberta between $50 and $100 billion. A lot of Western resentment still about the National Energy Program. And, this is because government shouldn't be in the business of oil and gas. They're not a company. Their job is to protect the rule of law. So what's the libertarian position on pipelines? Are we pro-pipeline? Are we anti-pipeline? What am I trying to say? Well, no, we're neither. We are pro-markets. We are pro-property rights. We're pro-liberty. And so land shouldn't be expropriated to build a pipeline, and pipelines shouldn't be blocked if they can negotiate peacefully a peaceful right-of-way with landowners. And in this case, it's a little bit more complicated because we have public land here and that is controlled by the government. So I think it's reasonable for them to expect certain standards and obligations. And I mean, if a pipeline was going across my property, I'd want to make sure there were proper environmental controls. I'd want to make sure maybe they had a whole bunch of money in escrow that they couldn't touch in case there's a disaster, that we can use that money to clean up. Like there are things that I would require as a property owner. It's reasonable to expect that if government is currently the property owner of that land, that they have some requirements. And I think Kinder Morgan has bent over backwards to meet and exceed all these requirements. And yet BC government still isn't allowing them to go through. And again, this is part of your obligation under Confederation. You can't landlock us here in Alberta. You signed on to this. You're married to us. This is a partnership. There should be reciprocity. So it's not clear to me what the value is here to Alberta, having BC part of this marriage, part of this confederation. Of course, I don't think the average BC resident shares the view of the BC government. I don't think they can necessarily be blamed here. I think that 70% of BC's economy is created by the resource sector, which is primarily people in interior BC or hardworking folks who understand the need to move goods and services around. And I think most of the opposition comes from kind of champagne socialists who are living high off the fruits of capitalism, and in their condominiums in Vancouver, virtue signaling. But that's a topic for another conversation. But there's my comments. I'm against it. It's a terrible, terrible situation. And the other thing that it does that concerns me is that it undermines the philosophy of liberty. Just the language being used, right? Like, this is our resource, our oil. We ought to refine it here. It's not ours. It belongs to the people who get it out of the ground. You understand that? It's not Canada's resource. It belongs to the people who get it out of the ground. I don't know why people, and I see this in conservative circles and liberal circles, they love this idea that we all jointly own this resource. No, we don't. No, you got to actually do something to get the privilege of owning something. You don't just get it by default of being born here. So, the very language is undermining it. And conservatives that backed Harper's bailout of the auto industry don't have a leg to stand on here. I mean, how can they criticize Trudeau here? He's doing exactly what Harper did. He's redistributing tax dollars to save some jobs. And it's a travesty.